Good morning. Welcome to New Year, New You, choosing the financial partner you need to thrive in 2026. My name is Eric Brotman. I am the chairman and chief growth officer of BFG Financial Advisors in suburban Maryland. I am joined by Germaine Foley. Germaine, why don't you introduce yourself, and then I'll do some housekeeping before we get started.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Germaine Foley. I am a certified life and money coach, and I work with people all over the country. So I am so glad you all are here. We're going to have a lot of fun today talking about which financial partner you need to help you thrive in 2026.
And this is not mutually exclusive either. It's not a one or the other. It might be a both. And, in that rare case, it's a neither. We accept that that's a possibility. But nonetheless, for those of you who don't know BFG, we're a financial planning and wealth management firm. We also have clients across the country and I've been at this now 32 years, stepped down as CEO January 1st. So it's truly a new year, a new me. My first new job since I was about 22 years old, which is pretty exciting. So I'm going to advance the slides. In the background, there's a producer extraordinaire named Sarah Losi who will be helping us out today. She's going to be gathering questions. So in the bottom right box, if you have questions, you can type them in. She will either interrupt us, which she does to me all the time, or she will wait to the end. We'll have time for Q&A, and we'd love to make this interactive. First, we have to make all of the lawyers happy. All right, happy lawyers. We are the hosts of the show. Germaine and I met at FinCon were we in Portland, Oregon? Is that where
We
we
were in
met?
Portland, Oregon.
Portland, Oregon, and spent some time talking about when you need a financial advisor and when you need a financial coach, and can you use both, and what's the difference. And so we're going to share some of that with you, but we're going to start with a poll. So this is audience participation time. And Sarah, if you'll put the poll up on the screen, just a quickie. One question: have you used a financial coach or advisor before? Yes, you've used a financial coach, or yes, you've used a financial advisor, or yes to both, or no to neither. We'll give everybody about a minute, and then Sarah's going to let us know where folks are in that conversation. Germaine, have you ever used a financial coach before?
You know what? I did not use a financial coach.
But have you used a financial advisor?
Yes, I have used a financial advisor.
And why isn't it me? I just thought I'd throw that
I
out there
just
for
met you.
conversation. Oh, all right.
Goodness.
Well,
I
okay.
just
All
met
right. All
you,
right.
like
Let the argument begin. All right, Sarah, what kind of results do we have on our poll today?
All right. It looks like a lot of our participants have used a financial advisor. Some of them have not used any, but no one has used a financial coach before. So that's really interesting.
Any boths?
No, no, both.
No boths. So
Some people have
there
used
are
advisor
there
and
are
some have used neither.
there are dozens of people on this webinar who have never used a financial coach before, and they might not even know what a financial coach is.
yes.
What a marvelous segue to what is, in fact, a financial coach.
Yeah. Okay, so I have to tell everyone the reason why I am a financial coach is because my money used to be a hot mess. I had a ton of debt, over $200,000 worth of debt. I used to overspend, I couldn't save, and I just felt stressed around money all the time. So if I knew that someone like me existed back then, I would have hired her 100%, like, quickly. But I didn't know that a financial coach was a thing, and I definitely didn't know how to find one. So, a financial coach is someone who can help you change your financial habits. So, if you are someone who you're making money, right? The money is coming in, but you don't know where it's going. It comes in and it goes right back out. Maybe you overspend, you find yourself not only in credit card debt, but it's like you pay it off and then it comes back and you pay it off again and it comes back and you just can't shake it. Or if you have trouble saving money, we all know, we should have 3 to 6 months or more of expenses saved in an emergency fund, but you can never get there. Every time you save some, you spend it. Then that's where a financial coach comes in. Someone who will help you with your day-to-day expenses, setting up systems, not strict budgets, but systems that are going to allow you to really build a strong financial foundation so that your spending is under control, but you're still not feeling deprived. You can still enjoy your life. That the debt isn't consuming you, that you have savings and you feel like, okay, I have some protection against me in life. And when you have those intact, then you're perfectly positioned to be able to build wealth. And that's where my friend Eric comes in.
What a wonderful segue. Although I have to say, I'm glad this isn't the podcast because on our podcast, you use the B word, budget,
Mm.
and that gets you in trouble on the podcast. But today you get a pass because it's a webinar and we're allowed to do that.
Well, I don't love the word either. I like to say system, but people think of budgets.
The
This
word
is what they
budget's
say.
a budget's like a diet. Let's talk about nutrition, not a diet. Nobody likes a budget. All right. So
Exactly.
what
I
is
get you.
a financial advisor, which apparently most of our audience has used a financial advisor? I don't know who's on our audience live today or who's going to watch this after the fact. So I don't know if we are, in fact, your financial advisors or not. But either way, a financial advisor is someone who is really designed to be the offensive coordinator in your huddle, the person who's going to make sure that all of your advisors are coordinated. Your insurance folks, your real estate, your mortgages, your banking, your investments, your HR and employee benefits, and everything starts to work together. And you're making decisions. Some of them are around things like Social Security or pensions. Some of them feel mundane, like credit monitoring or homeowners insurance or little things. But it all adds up to one big picture. And so, what a financial advisor does, I say it's the offensive coordinator in the huddle, but a lot of times we think of it as a primary care physician. I think a financial advisor is doing the physical exam, and then we're finding the specialist needed for your specific situation. Do you need somebody to help refinance a mortgage? Do you need somebody to help with investment management? Are we that group? Should we be? A lot of financial advisors do manage assets. And at BFG, we do that. But there are some who don't do that. Some of them are only specialists in one area or another, whether it's estate planning or retirement planning or income or college planning and education. But that's when a financial advisor comes in. And, I think everyone on the planet could benefit from a financial advisor. I actually think just about everyone on the planet could benefit from a financial coach too, to be frank. But not everyone thinks they can afford one. There's an idea that financial advisors are only for the ultra wealthy. And so hopefully today, as we go through some different stages of financial lives together, we can dispel that myth because financial advisors and financial coaches both are not only for people who are wealthy. A lot of times it's Henrys. And so we're actually going to start there.
Mhm.
Our first sort of life stage, and we're going to do 5 of these today. The first one's early career. And early career is an interesting time because it's the first time that a lot of young people have, I'm going to use the word adulted, which I'm not sure was ever meant to be a verb, but we're going with it because the millennials and the Gen Zs love to do that. It is the moment in your life where you're faced with some major decisions for the first time. Now, you've made big decisions. You've made decisions about where to go to school and then whether you did student loan funding or other things. And student loans are a decision that no 17 or 18-year-old should probably be making on their own. And Germaine, you might want to talk about that when we get to some of those decisions. But the early career, the big things here are habits, forming the right habits, understanding your employee benefits. We've done webinars and programs on employee benefits. You show up for your first day of work and you get 100-page packet of stuff and they say, we need this back Friday, make your elections. And you're not even sure most of the time what you're looking at. Picking the right health plan, or do I need disability insurance, or what are all these other options, or how do I use some of these? And a lot of employee benefits go either underutilized or unused completely. So, financial wellness, I believe, begins at the very early career level. And if you're lucky enough not to be starting your career in debt via student loans or other things, then you really can begin habits toward wealth building. On the other hand, if you're starting with major student loans, the very first thing you have to do is chip away at that and try and make it go away. But in terms of early career, it's habit forming, and it's just being ready to make some major elections. So, Jermaine, I'll let you chime in because I know you have some thoughts on the subject.
Absolutely. So this is the stage where your habits, as Eric said, are so important. And even if you start with student loans, if you just start investing, and I know I'm in your world a little bit, Eric, At this
Okay.
stage, oh my gosh, the amount of money you'll have is just exponential due to compounding interest. So you want to think about like what habits can I start to form so that I can get into this compounding interest game as soon as possible. And there are two pitfalls that I see that prevent people from getting into that. And that is one, I can't afford it, right? You think, oh my gosh, I have all these expenses now. I have an apartment, I have groceries, I have my student loans. But if you just start small and then grow from there, investing, there's so much, like I said, that you'll have available for you when you're ready to retire or start a new career or start another stage of your life. The other one is the other pitfall is I have time, right? You think you're so young, you're in your mid 20s, and you're like, well, I have time. I'll get to that later. And I will tell you that thought right there is one of the biggest wealth stealing thoughts I've ever heard because every time you tell yourself that, you push it out further and further. And then you wake up in mid career or wherever, and you're just like, oh my gosh, where has all the time gone? I feel behind. And so, this is where I don't care who you are, how much student loans you have, this is where you can decide, okay, I'm going to develop some habits so that I can set myself up to live a wealthy life.
I think that's great advice. It's interesting because I look back at my own early career. I got my first job. I got that employee benefit packet. And one of the things I had the ability to do was buy stock in the company where I was
Mhm.
working at a discount.
Yeah.
And of course I didn't because, well, I've got plenty of time for that and I can't afford to do that and
Mhm.
all the things. And I can't fathom what that might have been worth today, but
Yes.
nonetheless, I didn't do it, and I made lots of mistakes in my early 20s because I didn't have a coach or an advisor or both, to help me through that. The other thing, when you talk about habits, I think the absolute number one thing, if there was one thing people could do at this stage in their career, and we've talked about it on the podcast, on webinars and different things, it's paying yourself first.
Mhm.
It's making the first bill every month that you pay to yourself, whether that's excess debt payments, whether it's savings, whether it's investment, whether it's your 401k or a savings account. Frankly, I don't care as long as at the beginning of every month you are putting money away for the long term and you're living on the rest instead of hoping there's money left over after you pay bills at the end of the month and saving haphazardly. I mean,
Yes.
is that something you concur with, Jermaine?
Oh my gosh, yes, and just setting up your financial life in a way where it just happens automatically. You're saving automatically, you're investing automatically, and we forgot something really important. If you're working for an employer, 9 times out of 10, or maybe 7 times out of 10, there is a match for your 401k. That is free money, right? So they'll say, "Oh, if you put in 3%, then we'll put in 3%." That is free money. Make sure you're getting your match. And again, people miss out on that due to I can't afford it and I have time. I'll figure it out later. So don't fall prey to that.
There is a match and there's a vesting schedule. So,
Yeah.
a lot of times you need to be with your employer for 3 years or 4 years or 5 years before all of the match money is officially yours and you can be free to take it with you. So, understand the rules of your plan. There's something called the summary plan description. It is legalese. It's not a lot of fun, but there's a couple of things in there that are really important, such as when does the money that your employer puts in on your behalf vest? And so that's important. I'm going to let you go first on the second one here. We're going to go to the next life stage. Now we're jumping ahead from early career to, oh boy, we're going down the aisle.
Yes, this is such a fun stage, but also a scary one. So if you think about it, you have two individuals who grew up totally different, different spending habits, maybe different levels of net worth, maybe different incomes, and now all of a sudden you're joining lives together. And this is where I think financial coaching can really come in to help people really get on the same page with money. So there's so many ways you can handle your money as an adult, right? As a married couple, you can have you take care of your bills, I take care of mine. Or my favorite is the his, hers, and ours accounts, where she has her money that she can spend and have fun with. He has his, but then the majority of the money goes into the ours account where you're taking care of the household, you're taking care of some of your financial goals together. And then you really are setting yourself up to just be on the same page. If I could say anything, I would just say, before you walk down the aisle, have a real in-depth conversation about money. This is one of the subjects that a lot of people just avoid. They just, you see red flags and you just ignore them. But sitting down and having that conversation can be the best thing you ever do for yourself. So that's kind of how I would start this off. What do you say, Eric?
That first of all, I think it's great advice. I like the his, hers, and ours. I like knowing that if you and I were in fact married, you would have some of your own money so that you could shop for gifts for me, and I wouldn't be feeling like I was buying my own stuff. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
There, I totally agree that having a conversation about money makes sense because all of us grew up learning different lessons. To your point,
Mhm.
most of the time we didn't learn it in school. Most of the time we didn't learn it from our parents. We watched them maybe. A lot of times we watch them make mistakes. Maybe we watch them fight about money. Maybe one of our parents was a saver and one was a spender and there was conflict. Maybe they were both spenders and there was constant panic over debt. Maybe they were both savers and they never did anything. I mean, there's so many different ways to make that difficult. There's one size never fits all. I think transparency with your partner on all levels is incredibly important, and money is definitely one of them. I mean, marriage can only end two ways. It can only end via death or divorce. I know how much fun that is, but the things people fight about are money and kids.
Mhm.
Those are the two big killers of marriages are money and children. That's what people disagree on because those are big issues that a lot of times aren't discussed or understood beforehand. And then once you get into the throes of his, hers, and ours, and now we're dealing with these things, it can create stress and strain. I think there are things to do when you first get married, in addition to the conversation and being transparent. I like the his, hers, and ours. Frankly, I think bank accounts, generally speaking, should be joint. But I think it's good for a married couple to have two distinct checking accounts, and they're both joint in case something goes wrong. You need access to money, but it's sort of his account, her account, and both names are on them for various reasons in case somebody's in an accident or whatever. But it does allow you to have some of your own financial independence while still sharing in the household expenses. I think that's really good. There's also some things you're going to do when you get married that maybe aren't as intuitive. If you're both working, then you have to look at both sets of employee benefits because getting married is a life event that allows you to change where your benefits are even mid-year potentially. So should you be both on the same health insurance plan or should you each be with your own employer? And those kinds of decisions get made. It's probably a time to start looking about fun things like life insurance. Like what happens if we're now sharing bills, we're sharing some expenses and one of us is in an accident, the other person now is responsible for essentially all of it. Should we have life insurance? Should we put some other things in place? Maybe that means putting legal documents in place. I mean, I think as soon as you're 18, you should have a basic financial power of attorney and a basic health directive. Maybe not a will at 18 unless you actually have some assets, but doing wills and so forth, particularly when you get married, matters because otherwise every state has a plan for you. And then just having some shared goals. I think if you're going to work with a coach or an advisor or both, go together. Have
Mhm.
really open and honest dialogue together. I have heard some amazing things from couples during some of those introductory sessions where they discover things about each other that they didn't know. One of my favorites was asking a married couple who were coming in for financial advice for the first time. And we were talking about the house. And I said, well, how long do you plan to be in the house? And the husband said, forever. And the wife said, about 18 months. That's a true story. I just looked at this poor guy. I said, "You ought to get some boxes because you didn't know it, but you're moving." And that's sort of the way some of this plays out. So that's great. Let's move on to our next life stage. And the next life stage, well, a lot of times after marriage comes parenthood. Not always,
Mhm.
but lots of times. And parenthood is another major, major life event. In fact, maybe the most major life event there is in terms of how it makes you feel as a father of a absolutely perfect teenage daughter. I can tell you that becoming a parent changes everything. It changes the way you feel about your own life, your family, your values. So many different things change. But financially, um, kids are expensive, really expensive. Whether it's because of daycare, or whether it's because of healthcare, or whether it's because of education, or whether it's because just suddenly taking a vacation is more seats on the plane. I mean, everything you do, going out to dinner is a new expense because
Mhm.
there's more people, and forget college. Good Lord. I mean, when you start thinking about what it costs to educate your kids, it's wild. But when you become a parent, presuming you're in a marriage and you become a parent and now you have new financial responsibilities, there are also responsibilities that are truly permanent. I mean, becoming a parent is truly a forever thing. And so that's a great time to look at. If you haven't hired a financial advisor before, it's a good time to do that, because not only might you disagree on how to raise a child. I mean, that's a whole nother, and we're not therapists, but that's a whole nother discussion. But also, how do you structure your money around having kids? Do you consider private school? Do you consider moving to a home in a different neighborhood and looking at public school? That's just a simple example, but there's so many just like it. So I think it's a great time to engage an advisor and start thinking about, well, now we've got a new horizon. We've got somebody for whom we're responsible fully, at least for a period of time, and then who we're going to want to take care of forever because they're our blood. What do you think?
I agree 100%. This was when I finally had my wake up call, right? I started off by saying how bad my money was. And we ended up having 2 kids in daycare at the same time, and that daycare cost every single month was the exact same amount as our mortgage, and that is when I knew that I had to figure something out. So having kids sometimes is when it's one of those milestones that cause you to think differently, and I had a goal because my husband and I ended up with a bunch of student loans. That's one of the reasons why we had so much debt. I knew that I didn't want that for my kids. So investing in the 529 plans and um, one of my boys ended up going to private school. I never thought in a million years that I would be sending my child to private school, but that's what he needed. And it was the best decision I ever made. So being flexible, being willing to pivot, knowing that each child is different, right? Every child, I mean, one child may not cost you as much, but the other child may, depending on their needs
Mm.
and their level of engagement in sports. It's just so much. Um, but yeah, so how do you help people? This is the question I get all the time. It's just like, okay, I haven't really started in investing in my retirement. Should I start my kids 529? Which one should I prioritize? What do you think about that?
Well, I tend to think it's a little like the airline safety lecture. First,
Mm-mm.
put on your own mask, then put on the masks of the people you're with.
Mhm.
The only thing you can't borrow for in this life is retirement. It's financial independence. Everything else, there's a way to finance it somehow. Retirement's the one that you can't. So I've seen entirely too many cases where people put so much money away for their kids' education that they couldn't retire or that they were going to live in a terrible way. And I've said, you're going to have some wonderfully educated children. Which one are you going to live with when you can't afford to stay in your own home? And I wasn't kidding. That's a real thing. So I think it's really important to take care of ourselves first. I think it's, as parents, I think it's incumbent upon us to say our kids are a priority. But one of the things I wanted to be able to promise my own daughter is you're never going to have to take care of me financially, because the sandwich generation, and we are part of that sandwich generation, where people are looking at it and they've got parents in their 80s and kids in their teens, and they've got to sort of handle both, and not just logistically and health wise, but financially. The one thing no one wants to be is a burden to their children in any way, whether it's because they need to be taken care of physically, or whether it's because they need help financially or in any other way. You want grandma to be able to visit, but not to have to stay. And not because you don't love her, but because that dynamic isn't, in some cases it's great, but in a lot of cases it's not the best dynamic for a family.
Yeah.
And so I definitely think you take care of your own first. Retirement is first, and education and other major savings for kids are second. I don't know that many people who are struggling to get to financial independence whose first goal should be, I want to leave my kids lots of money.
Mm.
Their first goal is, I want to live with dignity and comfort and the way reasonably that I'm used to for as long as I'm here. And I don't know whether I'm going to live to be 72 or 112, but I want to make sure that I have enough to never run out of money. Running out of money is a terrifying thing for older people because a lot of them don't have the ability to go make more.
Mhm.
So, and it's been said, I've said before that that to be young and broke is an inconvenience, and to be old and broke is a tragedy. So, yeah, take care of yourself first. That's my suggestion. I don't know if you see that same kind of dynamic.
I agree with you 100%. I think the biggest gift you can give your kids is to be financially secure yourself and not need their money. I've seen it time and time again where some of the clients I work with, especially when they're in that mid-stage career, which we're going to next, they're stuck. They're like, I have my kids, I'm trying to save for my retirement, and then I've got my parents that I'm taking care of. It is such a, stressful situation, so to me, I think, again, it's a great gift to be able to just take care of yourself for your entire life, and if you can leave them some money, the kids some money, that's a cherry on top, but not having to take care of you is a blessing enough.
Yeah, no, I think it's funny. I remember many, many years ago, I was probably a teenager, and I was at my father's office at the time, and I saw a book on his desk, which was called, I believe, How to Die Broke. So, so I hid it, of course, because I didn't want him to read it. But the reality is that an inheritance can be such a wonderful thing. It can also really damage young people, particularly people who are counting on it and therefore don't either launch or aren't as ambitious or as fastidious as they could be because they sort of feel like there's a safety net and something's coming. And I told both my parents, for all along, I said, "You don't have to leave me a nickel, but please, please make sure you can take care of yourself." So I totally agree with you. I think that's good advice. I'm a little disappointed because we're halfway through this webinar and you and I haven't had any meaningful arguments yet. So I'm waiting for the disagreement, and so far we're in line. So maybe it's coming. Maybe it's on the
Maybe. We'll
stage.
see, we'll
So
see.
here you go. I'm going to let you go first in case I can find something to pick on.
All right. So this is where I typically get women coming to me. They're in their mid-career, they're making good money. They're looking back like, "Oh my gosh, I've made so much money, but I have nothing to show for it." This is where they feel like, "I'm behind, I should be further along by now, like, what is happening?" And this is where, again, they're maybe in their 40s, right? So that's a milestone for a lot of people, like, "Oh my gosh, I'm 40 years old," or 45 or 50. Some people come to me at 50 and they're like, "I gotta do something." So this is when you're making the most money, right? And if you haven't developed those financial habits that we talked about earlier, the money's coming in, but it's just going right back out. And so this is where a lot of people decide to like level set and they start to reevaluate things and they notice that, oh my gosh, I should be investing. I want to be able to be work optional one day. I want to be able to not retire in the traditional sense, but I want to, not have to work a 9 to 5 and maybe do my own thing. And I want to be set up to be able to do that. And they're looking at the numbers and the math just isn't mathing. And this is where I come in and we just really get those financial foundations in place. And typically, these are the two things that they're stressing about: overspending. Here's the thing about overspending. It's not because you're irresponsible. A lot of times people use spending as a coping mechanism to
Mm.
deal with boredom, to deal with frustration. Sometimes we do it because we're not fulfilled in other areas of our lives, maybe our careers or our relationships. And spending is like something you do to just escape from the moment. And it's thousands of dollars just leaving their lives that could be redirected to something else. And then revolving credit card, high interest credit card debt. The spending is going on debt. And they pay off this. They don't have a problem paying off debt. They know how to pay off debt, but it's the staying out of credit card debt that they can't figure out. So again, they run up that same $10,000 balance over and over again. And when they get a bonus or a windfall of some sort, they pay it
Mhm.
off, but then they run it back up. So if you find yourself in that situation, at this stage of life, this is where a financial coach is almost imperative if you really want to change your life. And it's not too late here. I want everybody to know this is not too late. This is not the point where it's too late, but it is the point where you really do need to buckle down and decide that no more. You're going to get your finances together. What do you think, Eric?
I agree with you entirely that it's not too late. I'm trying to find something to pick on. I haven't been able to find it yet, and I am looking. But no, this is where you are. I'm not going to say it's your last chance, but you're getting pretty close. You are making. Usually, you're at your peak earning years. You're also at your peak expense years, though, other than if there's a long-term care event. I mean, if there's cognitive impairment later in life, that's the most expensive part of your life. But in the absence of that, this is the time. And you sort of talked about that spectrum where you've got folks who are maybe overspending. I think you highlighted what we used to refer to as retail therapy, where
Yeah.
it was the dopamine hit of something new felt good in the absence of other things. And that is definitely coaching, not financial advising. So I can't help a whole lot with that necessarily. However, I also think for people at the other end of the spectrum who have done a good job and have started to build real wealth, now you're in a tax situation. Like now, for the folks who have done really well, this is the spot where you're making a lot of money and you're giving a lot of it to the government in various ways. And you have to start making decisions. You never want the tax tail to wag the dog, right? That's not necessarily the way to make big life decisions, but there are some that are coming up, like where should I be living? Where should I think about retiring? What can I do to shelter some of my income? Am I positioning myself with the right tax diversification for when I do retire? And so I think most new clients come to us at this stage too,
Mhm.
which is interesting that's the same. I think there is a wake up call. I don't know if it's 40, if it's age related or if it's stage related, but for me it was 50. For me, 50 hit me like no, just about no matter what, I'm at the midpoint, like literally the 50-yard line.
Mhm.
If you figure that your working adult life is potentially in a perfect world like 20 to 80, I'm at the midpoint. If you're gonna live to be 100, you're at the midpoint. Like this is it. And so psychologically, spiritually, it affected me in a different way than other birthdays. But here, I really think this is a spot to start figuring out what life might look like um, after your career. What do you want to be when you grow up? Not what do you want to do, but what do you want to be? And spending a lot of time thinking about not just thinking about the absence of work. I mean, yes, financial independence is great, but what are you going to do with what could be a 30-year vacation? You're not talking about going to the islands for a month. You're talking about half of your adult life potentially spent not with a career if that's something you want to do. And figuring out what we want to be, I think is even more important than what we want to do. It's got to be more than a bucket list, don't you think?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think sometimes people fantasize about retiring and not working. That's not a fantasy. There's so many people who retire and they're bored out of their minds and they feel like they're going to just travel the world and they do a little bit of that. But I look at someone like Oprah who's in her 70s. She doesn't need a dime, but she's still growing and doing and experiencing and being, the next highest version of herself. So and you're gonna need money, to do that, right? So I agree that, really checking in at this point with your financial habits, but then also your financial goals is just super important.
Well, let's take one more life stage, and then we'll have some time for Q&A and some other thoughts. Here you go, retired and financially independent, which to me should be the same. I don't consider retirement the absence of work. I consider it the absence of needing to work. And, people ask me, what's my retirement plan? Well, I don't have a retirement plan per se. I never want to retire. Health willing, I want to do this for as long as possible. But I do need to be prepared for the day that could come where either I can't or I change my mind. I don't want to be in a position where I've got to punch that clock when I'm 74. Like, I really think if you love what you're doing, that's great. But if not, then you want to have some flexibility. So this is where I think we talked about the big financial milestones. The first one is getting out of school and getting your first job and having all those daunting things to look at. The second, I think, is parenthood. I know marriage is a big deal, but two adults without kids can figure it out.
Yeah.
Once there's a child, it's a different thing. And I think this is the third. And I actually think this is, in some ways, the hardest one because you spend your entire life with the habits you started with, putting away $100 a month or $1,000 a month or whatever it is for all those years. And you build it and you build it and you build it and you build it. And now it's here. And now you have to figure out how to use it without running out of it. Do you ever have, I don't know if you travel a lot. I travel a bunch, and between hotel points or airline points or whatever, do you ever find yourself accumulating them and not wanting to use them?
All the time. I'm
So why
saving them
is
up
that?
for something special.
Okay, but which at the end of the day, and I get, I'm like, oh, I have 2 million Marriott points. Why? But if you don't use them and enjoy them, what were they for? I think it's really hard, even with something simple like that, it's really hard to dip into the pot you have been told your whole life is sacrosanct and you shouldn't touch.
Mm.
Don't touch the 401k. Well, now you're supposed to touch the 401k. How do you do it? How do you do it responsibly? How do you do it in a way that you're not creating a tax problem for yourself or impacting Medicare adversely or impacting your children or other family members adversely or over withdrawing? You talk about overspending. I don't see a whole lot of overspending folks who come to us. I see over withdrawing folks come to us though. Folks who are pulling 6 or 7 or 8% of their nest egg out a year, where that is a recipe to run out of money. Unless you're 93 years old, don't be messing with that because you will run out of money. And we see that a lot. And that is a really bitter pill to swallow when somebody's like, I just worked for 45 years and you're telling me I can't do X. I said, well, I'm not telling you you can't. I'm telling you, you will pay the piper for that at some point if you live long enough. And unfortunately, the withdrawal rate and how to use the money is not something intuitive. It's intuitive to put away money every month and watch your 401k grow. And you talked about getting the match, and we do that for 50 years. But then how do we use it? I know so many people who have built these big IRAs, big 401ks, and then they don't want to use it because they don't want to pay taxes. Well, it, either you're going to, or your kids or somebody else is going to. You might as well enjoy the fruits of your labor. I don't know. What say you?
Yes, so it's interesting you say that. So, I work with women. A lot of them, they come to me and maybe they haven't been able to build up a savings nest egg, like an emergency fund. And working together, they finally have the number, right, that they've been wanting to have. And then something happens where they need to use some of that money and they don't want to use it. So I stopped calling it a emergency fund and I call it a life happens fund. So when life happens, you use that money and don't go back into credit card debt. So that's another thing. But just almost reprogramming the way you think about what that retirement fund is for. So maybe instead of, we hear it all, don't touch it, don't touch it. Maybe we need to start saying, don't touch it yet, or don't touch it until this date. Like the goal is to build it, build it, build it, and then start to spend it and maybe just start planting that seed earlier. I don't know. What do you think? You think that could help?
Well, I've got a couple thoughts, but the first one is you do not call it a Life Happens Fund. That's the PG version for this webinar, and we both know it. It's a something else happens fund, and I know it. You can't fool me. Um, so actually, I actually think when you are withdrawing, there are several different ways to plan your withdrawals, and it really is based largely on your lifestyle and your nest egg. What have you built? If you have enough money that you can live on 2% of it every year, you can use total return. You can throw it in one giant bucket and just take a little from it and still grow it most of the time. That's rare. It's a lovely problem to have, but it's rare. Most folks are either asset segregators or annuitizers. They're not total return folks. Asset segregation is where you take different pots of money and put them away for different time periods so that you can compartmentalize that this is the account I'm using for the next 5 years, but I still have all this that I'm not touching.
Mhm.
And it helps the psychological torture of making a withdrawal from something when you say, this is for my years 75 to 80 over here, and I'm not using any of the rest unless, well, life or something else happens. And then for folks, that's usually around that 4% number. You hear about the 4% withdrawal rule. 4% is not perfect. The math will only math under certain conditions because the sequence and series of returns Now I'm getting wonky, sorry. But the sequence and series of returns matters as much as the average. In fact, maybe more. If you happen to retire right before a market decline, it's going to impact you for the rest of your time. So having those things set up well before you retire makes a difference. I think there's a 5 to 10 year window prior to the date you plan to be financially independent that you have to start investing differently. It can't be all about growth. When you're getting ready for a station stop, even if it's a couple miles up, you don't have your foot, pushed only on the gas. You got to be ready. Even if you're not braking yet, you got to be ready with a foot ready at the brake. And so I think that's the same. And then for folks where it's much more than 4%, using annuitization or creating income streams that have some guarantees in them from insurance companies or other places, it can make a huge difference. A lot of people are afraid of that because, first of all, they hear horror stories. And second of all, there are situations where those decisions can be very expensive or can be made wrong or can be, seniors can be induced by bad eggs to do things that aren't in their interest. And there's so many horror stories. It scares folks. The reality is that having some of your money creating an income that helps with the fixed expenditures can allow you to be a little bit more careful with the rest of the money for the fun expenditures or sometimes the emergency expenditures. Last thing I'll say about this, and then I'll let you have the last word on this life stage, and that is we have to be thinking about healthcare at this point. Medicare, which kicks in at 65, is fine, but it does not handle things like long-term care. So, and people confuse Medicare and Medicaid, and anytime you have a program that's that massive, that's government run, there's going to be lots of challenges with it, and it's very complicated. So getting the right help at that moment matters, and having a plan for if you or your spouse were to get really sick, whether it's physical impairment, whether it's cognitive. I mean, Alzheimer's is one of the scariest things I can think of because you need 24/7 surveillance sometimes. You need care all the time. Really tough. So, and super expensive. So having a plan around that to be I always say a perfect financial plan has to be perfect no matter what. It has to work no matter what. So it has to be as secure and bulletproof as it can be from all of the things, from getting disabled, from living too long, from dying too soon, from having an accident, from being unemployed for a period of time, from having a marriage or a divorce or having triplets. A perfect financial plan, which basically doesn't exist, but call it ideal in some way, it has to work no matter what. And that means it has to be constantly stress tested and constantly adjusted. Why don't you take the last word on this, and then we'll see if Sarah's getting some questions in the box.
Well, my last word is actually a question for you, Eric.
Uh-oh.
Do you have an age that you recommend where people buy long-term care insurance? Because you're right, that is the most expensive part of life, is that end of life care, you
Well,
know?
it is, and not everyone should buy long-term care insurance. So let's start there.
Okay.
Long-term care insurance is not the only solution to pay for care. Insurance agents will tell you it's the only solution, but it is a solution. There are lots of different ways to do this, and not all of them have to be involved with insurance with premiums. I would say by 45 or 50, you should be thinking about this. This is something that I bought. And I was probably not quite 50 yet when I put mine in place, and I feel better knowing it exists.
Mhm.
But long-term care insurance, if you are wealthy enough that you don't care, it's unnecessary. You'll just pay the freight. And if you are at the other end of the financial spectrum, long-term care insurance can make you even more insurance poor because it might not be possible to pay that premium, or paying that premium might affect your quality of life to a point where it doesn't make sense, and you're going to wind up having very few choices anyway. So I
Mhm.
think long-term care insurance is a solution for folks in the middle and upper middle class who are trying to offset the cost if one or both spouses get sick. You don't have to cover everything. Don't insure for everything.
Yeah.
I tell people the same thing with like a car insurance. People get these low deductibles on their comprehensive. It's like if you get a scratch, it's not going to change your life. It's going to upset you, but it's not going to change your life. Insure against the big risks and don't worry about the smaller ones. So, no one should be overspending on insurance just because they feel better. I mean, there's a
Right.
tipping point. But I think 45 to 50 is where you start thinking about it. And then if you're healthy enough to qualify for something at that age, make sure that whatever you do has a premium that can't change. Because traditional long-term care policies are they are guaranteed renewable but not non-cancelable, and that is insurance jargon for we can't cancel you, but we can change your premium.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the premium does go up, and companies will petition the state and say we need a 12% increase. And if the state says yes, you're getting a letter saying your premium's going up to this, or you can reduce your benefits, or some combination, and that is not terrible at 65 when you're working. It is terrible when you're 83 and you realize, man, I got to make hard decisions now. And I've been paying for this for years.
Yeah.
So there are ways to tie other benefits to long-term care, annuity benefits, life insurance benefits, income streams. And if you do it that way, then you get the best of both worlds, in my opinion, because if you don't need the care, you haven't lost the money. There's some
Mhm.
other way to use it. Like, nobody wants to get long-term care insurance. No, I'm not picturing myself as an infirm elderly human. I can't wrap my head around that. Not that it couldn't happen. Of course it could. But nobody wants to spend all that money for something they never want to use and hope they never use. So if you can find a way to do the planning, whether it's insurance-based or not, whether you find a way to do the planning where there is a plan B for those dollars, I think it's a better way to go. I think you don't feel like you're flushing it down the toilet every month or every year. That's just me. But yeah, by 45, it's a conversation to have, especially because some of them can be paid for over 10 or 20 years. And in a perfect world, you don't want to be retired and paying a premium for darn near anything.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can avoid life insurance premiums and have that paid up by the time you're 65, have long-term care paid up by 65, have your mortgage gone by 65, all the things that in life where you say, all right, yes, my income might go down a little bit, but my expenses go down a lot, and therefore my tax bracket might be lower, and you can plan around that. I think there's a strategy involved there, and then of course people who are at the upper wealth spectrum don't care. I mean, they
Yeah.
care, but if
That
they
they have
buy
to pay for it.
if they buy long term care insurance, it's as a hedge for
Yeah.
their wealth transfer. It is not because they're worried about paying the freight, and it's a different discussion. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a wonderful place. It'd be great if we were all there.
Yeah. Such a good explanation. Thank you so much.
Well, gosh, I feel like I should ask you a question. And in fact, I'm going to. I'm going to ask you a question because that's only fair. Um, in your coaching experience,
Mhm.
what are the biggest epiphanies that you think your clients have where it's like, oh, the light bulb went on, I've
Mm.
got it?
Yeah. I think it's when they finally understand that they don't have to struggle with money anymore. Like,
Mm,
it's actually a choice to struggle with money, right? I thought when I was stuck, especially if you're someone who's making doing well, you're in that middle bucket, middle class, upper middle class, so you're making 100K, 200K or more, 300K, whatever it is, and you're still stressed about money. It's like you just feel like that's just the way life is. But having someone in your corner that can show you a different way, walk with you step by step, hand in hand, and you see it, like you see your life changing, you see the stress dissipating, you see the money piling up and the credit cards going down and the spending intact. And then they're ready for somebody like you to help them take it to the next level. It's a great feeling to be able to get someone to that place where they just feel like so empowered and that they have control. And that they're not
So
bad
we've
with money.
well, and that's wonderful to feel confident, not
Yeah,
cocky. You don't want to feel
yeah,
cocky, but
mhm.
confident about money. I think is good. We've got a couple of things that we're going to give to everybody who came today for free, and I think you're first. I think.
Yes,
So
I am
this tell
first.
us about this QR code and why everyone should now have their phones in their hands immediately.
Yes, get your phones, take a picture, and sign up for this class. This is one of my most popular classes because it has the B word on here for a reason.
I
Nobody
I see
wants
it. At
to
least it's at the
go
bottom of the screen.
nobody wants to budget, nobody wants to go on a strict budget, and there are so many people who believe that the only way to get their money under control is if they go on a strict budget, and they don't want to. So they put it off and they ignore their money until they can't ignore it anymore. But what if you didn't have to go on a strict budget? What if you can build wealth and enjoy life at the same time? And that's my motto. You can do both. You can build wealth and enjoy life at the same time without a strict budget. And this class just walks you through how to do that. So go ahead and
Excellent.
grab it. The web QR, the URL is Germaine Foley. That's Germaine with a G, Foley.com/wealth class, in case you're listening.
All right. And while your phone is out, a couple more seconds on this screen. All right. Your last chance. Okay. While the phone is out, we're also going to provide a free ebook, which is What is Financial Planning? It's a piece I put out a while back that talks about what the process is or should be. So if you have a financial advisor, make sure he or she or their team is walking you through this full process and what should be involved. I think ultimately understanding what this is before you sign up for it can be very, very helpful. Because unfortunately, there are a lot of different kinds of financial planners and financial advisors, and some of them are highly credentialed, and some of them are representatives of XYZ company. And so it's really important to understand what you should be getting, particularly because financial advice can be expensive. And I think cost is only an issue when value's in question, but ultimately, you need to make sure you're getting what you're paying for. So. All right, so take that QR code, and then Sarah, let's talk about questions. Have we gotten a few from the group?
Yeah, we have a couple questions. So I'm going to
Wonderful.
start with what are some of the credentials or qualifications that we should look for when we're considering a coach or an advisor?
You want to go first?
Sure, sure. For a coaching, there are several different modalities. So just so you know, I am a certified life coach, and I'm also a certified financial instructor, instructor. So that means I have the piece of it and also the financial literacy piece. Money is so much more than numbers. And so if I were looking for a financial coach, I would want someone who is a skilled life coach or someone who knows the psychology. You don't want someone who's just going to tell you to stop spending so much money and to tell you that you need to slash expenses and go on a strict budget. Like, you don't, that's not what you need, because those types of strategies work off of willpower. And willpower is a very limited resource, right? We need a lifestyle change. Eric, you said this earlier. Going on a strict budget is like going on a strict diet. Yes, you can do anything for a short period of time, but if you want to change your life, then you need to start from the inside out, the way you think about money, the way you behave with money. And then that's going to really just change the trajectory of your life. So I would look for someone who has both the financial literacy, but then also the coaching piece, and someone who's already done it for themselves and other people. So that's what I would say.
Good stuff. There are so many designations in the financial advisory space, and some of them are incredibly demanding and difficult to get. Some of them are basically certificates, and it's a shame that consumers don't know the difference, but really that's true. I think the gold standard in our industry is the Certified Financial Planner Practitioner, the CFP. There are 100,000 CFP practitioners worldwide. I believe that's the number right now, or thereabouts. And that is a group of folks who have not only a fiduciary duty, but a strict code of ethics and behaviors and standards to follow. And if you go to cfpboard.net, you can learn all about what those credentials are. There are others. I mean, for folks who are doing a lot of analysis, the CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst, is a very strong designation. They're not financial planners, but they are asset managers a lot of times. And then, if you were to look at my bio, you'd see alphabet soup, and it's because I love to learn. But I think ultimately, by the time you get through all the various designations and specialty areas and, accredited estate planner and certified private wealth advisor and all the different things, I think for us, for BFG, it's all about, we are a CFP firm. Our advisors are all certified financial planner practitioners. And I think that's the standard that I would love to see the financial industry adopt the CFP as the gold standard, much like the accountancy has done with the CPA. So that's what I would say. What else, Sarah? Good stuff.
Are there any red flags that we should look out for with coaches or advisors?
You want to take it first, or you want me to take it first?
I can take it. So
Go
anyone
for it.
who will guarantee you anything, right? I guarantee that you're going to get out of credit card debt. No, no one can guarantee you anything because a coach's job is to help you to reach your full potential, right? But that it takes two. I always like to tell my clients, I'm going to show up for you 1,000%, but you have to at least show up too, right? So I can't do the work for them. And so anybody who's guaranteeing you anything, it's I would just say stay away from that.
I would concur with that answer. I would also say that any financial advisor or any financial professional of any type who claims that they have an investment strategy that beats the market or that does something that's magic, forget it. It doesn't exist. What you really want is somebody who can be an advocate for you and an ally and a sounding board and an accountability partner, and someone who's a confidant who you can talk to about things that are really intimate. I mean, money is almost as intimate as medicine, frankly, at the end of the day. It's that's where stories happen. That's where you learn about somebody who's got a kid with a gambling problem or a drug issue or a horrendous spouse or all the things that happen in life. Life is hard and it's messy, and you can't just talk about the math. The math is middle school math.
Mhm.
It's not about the math. It's about behavioral finance. It's about why we do the things we do. And so, I wrote a book called Don't Retire, Graduate that talks a lot about that, and it has questions and answers for potential financial advisors, questions you can ask a potential advisor to try and vet some of the really professional ones from some of the ones who might not be. And not because there's always a right answer and a wrong answer, but because there's a lot to know. I think we have time for maybe one more, and then we'll do some closing remarks.
Any suggestions for talking to your parents about
Mhm.
their financial plan?
Hmm. Yeah, I'll jump in first again, I guess. So I'm at that stage now where my parents are they'll both be 70-ish, starting, I think, this year. I think my dad turned 70 this year, and then my mom is like right behind him. And I'm going to be sitting down with my mother probably today or tomorrow, and we're going to like really look at her money because she's starting to feel a little stressed about retirement and what's next. So it, I heard someone say like one of the things your parents don't want to talk to you about is sex, but the other thing is money, right? They really don't wanna talk to you about those things because they feel like, "What are you gonna tell me?" But sometimes you just have to say, "Hey, I'm here. I'm not gonna pressure you, but if you ever wanna talk, this is what I'm seeing. I'd be happy to sit down to help you through whatever you're dealing with." I don't know. That's what I would say.
We facilitate family meetings between generations a lot. And a lot of the hesitation is around quantification of money. People who have a lot of money are embarrassed because they have a lot of money. People who don't have a lot of money are embarrassed because they don't have a lot of money. People who are at X think they should be at 2X, and there's so much baggage and so much around that. And parents don't usually want to tell their children about their financial affairs for lots of reasons. Either they are wealthier than the kids could imagine and they don't want to ruin them, or they're struggling more than they want their kids to know and they don't want their kids to worry about them. I mean, there really is a lot. And I think um, any kind of communication between generations is really important. And ultimately, if your parents get to the point where they can't function for themselves, you need to make sure that they've got the right powers of attorney, the right trusted contacts on accounts, the right ability for you to step in. And, sometimes it's almost as hard as taking the keys to the car and saying, Dad, you can't drive anymore. I mean, it really can be very emotional. So, but I do think it's a valuable exercise. If you have more questions we didn't get to today, the email addresses are at the bottom. I know I speak for Germaine when I say I know she'll take your email and respond to it, and I'll do the same. We are basically out of time. My last parting thought is don't wait, whether it's coaching, whether it's advising, whether it's both. whether you're dipping your toe in the water for the first time or you're looking for a second or third opinion or whatever it is, don't wait. It will never get easier tomorrow than it is today. And yesterday's gone. So that's what I got
Yeah.
for you. Jermaine, what is a closing remark, and then we'll tie up.
Yes, I will echo the same thing. There's this saying that the best time to have planted a tree was 20 years ago, but the next best time is today. And so wherever you are, don't let the "I have time" or "it's too late for me" thought steal what time you have left. So let's get to it. Either I say for some of you, both of us might be what you need, or if not, pick one and just go for it.
Yeah, well, or start with one, and
Yeah.
we can be your dream team coming down the pike for a while. So, Jermaine, thank you. This was awesome. I knew it would be. Thanks for being here, Sarah. Thank you for your excellence in the background, as always. I appreciate you. And this will be on our website. You can watch it again. You can share it with friends. I hope it was valuable. And thanks for being here today. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye bye.